If, as a juror on a murder trial, you were given this chart by the prosecution for the purpose of establishing in your mind the guilt of the defendant, would it work? This will become clear in a few minutes. There was a "she was always on duty whenever there was a suspicious event" chart, which was shown to the jury quite early on, I believe, in the Lucy Letby trial. 25 apparently suspicious events, all taking place when she was on duty, with her column dramatically highlighted in purple. The jury could see and read the purple highlighting was nothing more than graphic gameplay. If they had actually believed that their chart had substance, why not present it straight without any of the graphic drama? Why did they have to play these silly games? Because they wanted to do everything possible to prime the jury for convictions. Fair enough on the part of the prosecution if it was legitimate. Crucially, we don't know what the highlighted shifts relate to. They're simply called suspicious events, and it may be that the suspicion in question was simply her or something related to her presence. And that possibility is radically supported by the fact that they don't actually say what suspicious means. They're just events numbered 1 to 25. Why the secrecy if the suspicion is reasonable? In other words, draw up a chart of her shifts, call it a suspicious events chart, without actually explaining that suspicious simply means that she's on shift, and it is, in actual fact, a chart of her shifts and little more than that. If the entries are clearly and reasonably defined as suspicious, then you're absolutely good to go. You can have 25 totally legitimate suspicious events. You can have another 25, you can have 50, you can have as many as you want. It's not a problem. It's not a problem if we know they're suspicious. She was seen lurking mysteriously at the cot of baby X. She turned away, furtively looking from left to right, then legged it, and 2 minutes later the baby started to deteriorate. You can have absolutely as many of those as you want, but all we do know is that she was on shift. And because of that, which by the way is also all the jury knew, i.e. shifts claimed to be suspicious but with zero evidence to that effect, and which they accepted on good faith. Way to run a prosecution. You can't then just select 25 convenient entries because she was there and forget all about the rest because she wasn't there. That's called cherry picking the data. And there were 36 other events which were deemed to be non-suspicious, still not defined by the way, which have been left out of that chart in order to compress the so-called suspicious events all together into one solid line of purple guilt, and to give the impression that she's always there when she's not. So we have missing information. What to do? This has been rectified by an expert in this area, one John O'Quigley, who did an awful lot of work on this, and he laid it out in a YouTube video which I'm going to simplify and also add a bit of my own stuff. So we have 36 invisible events, but we can simulate them by creating another 36 shifts and randomly assigning all the other nurses to those shifts based on the regularity of their appearances in the chart that we do have. And if you do that, you end up with something like this. All the other nurses' shifts created based on their shift activity in the top chart, and Lucy Letby assigned an average of all the other nurses. These are non-suspicious events, so there is no reason for her to be around more than average. Now this new chart looks rather weird and top-heavy because what he's done is he's taken the original misleading chart and simply stuck the simulation underneath, leaving column 25 as one solid line down to almost halfway, then breaking up. This isn't actually chronologically accurate at all because in reality all these events are mixed together. So what I've done is I've taken everything and mixed suspicious, so-called, with non-suspicious, so-called, as they would approximately be in reality. And that's how it looks. This chart includes every single one of those 25 so-called suspicious events. Nothing is left out. Those are the suspicious ones, and all the others are the 36 simulated shifts based on the real-time data. If you were handed that chart in the jury box and told to pick out a problem nurse, would you be able to do it? I can give you a hand and do that as they did, but without the dramatic highlighting, could you pick her out? But we're not yet finished. I understand that she worked approximately 30% above average, and that needs to be taken into account to get a fair overall picture. Remember, these are undefined events on the part of a nurse working well over the average, and it is therefore misleading, which requires us, as the last part of this exercise, to reduce those 25 undefined events, shifts, or whatever, by about 30%. And that means we need to lose about 6 of them, and this gives us this final product. What you're looking at here is the missing data, 36 events simulated from the known data using proper simulation techniques, plus the original data from the bogus chart, but reduced by 25% or so in order to compensate for the fact of Lucy Letby's well above average time at work. And for clarity, it's those 6 events I removed to get that proper balance. If you looked at that without any other knowledge, could you spot the killer nurse? You could, of course, if I played the kind of graphic games that the prosecution played, but if you take that away and look at the bare chart, you would never identify an issue. Now compare that with what the jury was actually given to look at. What you are in fact looking at there is an optical illusion. You're looking at a darts scorecard, which goes 180, 180, 141, 180, 180, 141, over and over, as perfect as it can be, because you leave out all the misses. The prosecution primed the jury to convict with a bogus chart which left out all the shifts except the ones defined as suspicious, but without defining what was suspicious, what was meant by suspicious. And then they used play school colours to make it look as bad as possible. That fact alone doesn't mean you can throw out the whole lot there and then. There are plenty of other good reasons to do that. But a misleading statistical presentation which doesn't say what they claimed it said and was designed to illegitimately prime the jury for convictions does radically undermine the prosecution. And it is another reason for a rethink of the whole thing.